You see that one weird trapezoid of asphalt that's a different color from all the rest? Well, one day back in 2018, May 21st, 2018 to be precise, I was walking across that piece of asphalt and I looked down and I noticed a hole, roughly the size of my foot. And you could see down into that hole approximately 2 feet. I walked in, found the manager for that shift, Karen, and told her I'd seen a dangerous looking sinkhole in the parking lot. She said, "Show me." And the two of us immediately turned and walked back outside. As I was told by some other coworkers, they were like, "What did he say to her?" The two of them just walked out. On my next shift, the GM, Gary, said, "Oh, thanks for making me spend $9,000 fixing that sinkhole." I said, "What, did you want the lawsuit from somebody tripping and falling?" But it could have been worse, because when they excavated it and made the repair, they said within a month, a car would have fallen into that spot. Now, we've all seen sinkhole videos on YouTube. A great big black void opens and something falls in. And after the object falls in, usually you can still see down into the hole, which was much bigger than the object that fell in, right? But that's not the way things look in Ghostbusters. In the sinkhole scene in Ghostbusters, almost all of the street pieces rise up higher than the level mark of the road, rather than sinking. It's almost like it's a rise hole instead of a sinkhole. Why is that, do you wonder? The very earliest explanation actually predates the film itself. If we go into my Ghostbusters scrapbook and look for this New York Times article from Friday, November the 11th of 1983, it talks about the drama of persuasion. Tilted into a chasm of shattered asphalt on Central Park West was a police car. Red lights frantically flashing. Motorists stopped. Bus passengers gaped. But it was all an artful fake. A scene for the movie Ghostbusters. Bill Murray, the actor, stood smiling on the sidewalk next to the park, waiting to walk through fake steam, past the fake crash, through the fake building front. A technician carefully lined a fake crack into the sidewalk in black paint. Jay Moore, the art director, explained, "This all duplicates a model out in California. Out there, John DeCure, the production designer, has a working model of the crash site. Here, he supervised while technicians fussed over the life-size version." Passengers on a southbound bus were stunned when they saw the car crash scene, until a self-possessed woman said in a bored tone, "But don't you see? It's just a movie." I really like this article from the New York Times. I wish that I knew who the author was. There's no name credited here. If you can track down a copy, there's a little bit more to it that I edited out. I do take issue with the part about DeCure supervising while technicians fussed over the life-size version. Well, the model back in LA was also life-size. It was a 1-to-1 scale replica of the bottom 2 stories of 55 Central Park West. Now hold on, you scruffy young tearaways, before you head down into the comment section to say, "But in the 1999 DVD commentary track, Ivan Reitman said it was 3 stories.
John DeCure basically recreated the street in front.
2 floors of the building.
Yeah, actually 3 floors, so I could get wide enough for the shot.
He did. He was wrong. We've talked before about best evidence, and in this case, we're going to throw out the 1999, 15-year-later remembrance and go with a 1984 source. I have a few others we're going to look at later, but this one should prove right here in the production information of the Ghostbusters press kit that additional Los Angeles shooting was done at the Burbank Studios Ranch, where a 2-story facade of Dana's Central Park West apartment building was recreated. Not 3, 2. To give you a little bit of historical context, in the 80s, Dan Aykroyd had a tendency to overwrite his scripts.
I do write them big, though.
The story goes that for Blues Brothers, he turned it inside the cover of a Los Angeles phone directory. And according to the book Making Ghostbusters, his original concept for the sinkhole scene was just a little bit more imaginative. A sinkhole of much grander scale was included in the original Dan Aykroyd script when the accidental release of the Ghostbusters' incarcerated spirits triggers a 25-acre sinkhole around their gas station storage facility. The sinkhole, in turn, disrupts a long inactive fault line, which somehow transforms most of northern New Jersey into a blazing inferno. Dan's fertile mind was giving them these huge, epic scenes. Lots of them. And ultimately, it proved to be unfilmable. I don't mean that in a bad way. But with the level of technology in the 80s, it was not feasible for this particular project. You have to remember a couple of factors.
Number one, CGI was in its infancy.
Digital filmmakers would look at a Dan Aykroyd script and go, yes, we can do that fast, we can do that cheap, it's going to be a huge spectacle. But 80s technology, everything was hand-built, handmade. To do a sinkhole that wipes out New Jersey, you're going to have to build models. Models like they did in the Superman films for when a dam bursts. And it's going to take time. Time is the deciding factor because for Ghostbusters, they had just around a year from the pitch to the release. And they had $30 million to play with. Reitman said, it's too big. It's unfilmable the way it is. Let's get down to the brass tacks of this and the story. Not the spectacle, the story. So Reitman brings in Ramis to scale the story back, and at some point they say, let's put that sinkhole scene right before they go up into Spook Central. And although they briefly considered a location on First Avenue, ultimately they went with their second choice, 55 Central Park West. Shooting on Central Park West, the location for Dana and Lewis's ghost-infested apartment building, was not only a complicated proposition for the filmmakers, but for the city of New York as well. At times we had 400 or 500 extras working, says associate producer Joe Medjuk. As if blocking the traffic on Central Park West wasn't bad enough, we also ended up blocking the crosstown traffic coming through Central Park. At one time, I think we had the whole upper third of Manhattan in gridlock. Shooting in that location caused enough traffic problems for the city of New York, but could you imagine if they had actually dug a big hole right there on 55 Central Park West?
We really didn't think anyone would notice.
And since they couldn't actually do any permanent damage to the street, that's why they had to build a replica. Since no permanent damage could be done to the streets in New York, the area around the actual apartment house location was dressed with large jutting slabs of simulated asphalt. A police car, cut in half and upended, helped further suggest the presence of chasms in the roadway. A very similar quote appears in Cinefex number 17. Chuck Gasper notes that John DeCure built pieces of the broken street, which were all shipped back on trucks to New York. Here finally is the answer. Why do the pieces move upward? The pieces move upward because they had to match pieces that they were going to lay in place on top of the real street in New York. So you couldn't go below the plane of the real street. Everything had to jut upward, not downward. In the movie, only 2 of the slabs moved downward. The one with a police car, obviously. But see, its duplicate in New York was a trompe-l'oeil illusion with a half a police car. So they didn't actually dig downward below the level point. The other one that moves down is the one the Ghostbusters are on. And it dumps them into the street before reversing direction and now rising above the level of the street. I may need a visual aid. And for that, I got to go buy styrofoam. They built the replica in Los Angeles on the backlot at a cost of $250,000, $250,000. And a lot of people thought, including the 2 producers, Joe Medjuk and Michael C. Gross, that maybe we don't need this scene. The studio didn't want me to do it, and my associate producers both felt it was something we could give up. But I thought it was really important, because up to then, nothing really bad had happened to these guys. They'd had their hair tousled and blown around, but there was no real sense of the threat. It seemed to me that prior to the final battle, we had to demonstrate immediately and simply just what they were going up against. Complicating the entire 2-story versus 3-story debate, a couple of places in Making Ghostbusters, it says that it was a replica of the ground floor only of Central Park West that they built out in LA. And yet, on the same page as one of those, it clearly shows a photo of the LA reconstruction, and it's at least 2 stories. In the 1999 DVD commentary track, Ivan Reitman mentions that sometimes he still can't tell which shots were done in LA on the reconstruction and which shots were done on location in New York City. But a surprising amount of effort went into trying to make those shots intercut so seamlessly. In the June 1984 issue of American Cinematographer, they actually interviewed the cinematographer of Ghostbusters, Laszlo Kovacs. New York, first of all, is very far north, and during wintertime the arc of the sun is much lower, so you have a much more pleasing light as opposed to even winter light in California. There are situations, however, where I had trouble making an exact match, and where we had to drop a few shots and redo them here in Los Angeles. On the close shots, you can silk it and control the sunlight, if not too huge in areas involved. There were quite a few scenes that took place in front of the Gozer building that we didn't shoot in New York, but here on the Columbia backlot. The actual building was built to the second floor, and wide enough so that we could do some smaller scenes, and I had to silk the whole area. Silking was done a couple of places in Ghostbusters, as a matter of fact. They also silked the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man on the model street. When William Bryant is inside the costume, they needed the light on the miniature to match what they'd shot in New York too. But now, here's what I'm going to show you. I have photos provided by a friend that show us exactly what the silk looked like on the LA backlot recreation of 55 Central Park West. And now you will see why I have been saying this entire video, it was only 2 stories tall. And if for some reason you don't believe me about the silking, if you don't believe Laszlo Kovacs about the silking, well, it can actually be seen in the movie. Pay attention to the driver's side window of the police car that's sinking into the street. Now that was clearly shot in LA because it's actually in motion. You can see the silks reflected in the glass. Oh, somebody toilet papered their yard. And it's rained. Oh, poor folks.